And now our roundtable discussion. Every month we'll have a different panel of young pundits to get their voices on the issues that are going on in that episode. Today we have two great panelists to start us off. First we have Collin Ruane. He is a reporter at KOMU TV in Columbia, Missouri. And we have Bradley McRoberts, Arms Control and International Security, North Africa Branch Analyst for the U.S. Department of State. Usually he is in Washington, but today he's in Connecticut. Welcome, guys, to the program.
Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Thank you for having me.
As you just heard from Mr. Gibson, he told us a lot about his experience and what it was like for him to be reporting during 9/11. I want to play another clip of that and get your response. Take a look.
The country was united in a way that was amazing at that time. The flags that you saw in cars hanging from barns everywhere. The United States Congress that can't agree on what day it is. We're out on the steps of the Capitol, Democrats and Republicans alike, singing America the Beautiful. That was an amazing moment. Unfortunately, things have happened since that I think have divided the country in ways that are unfortunate because we were so united then. But it is exemplary of the fact that in times of adversity, when we feel threatened as a people, as a country, we pull together. And that to me was inspiring. I thought the country's reaction was inspiring, and I suspect, God help us, if something like that happened again, we would pull together in the same way.
All right, now I'd like to get both of your opinions, starting off with Brad, because you're already up on the screen. I want you to respond to that. Now, what did you think about the patriotism right after 9/11? What was the feeling like for you?
Well, on the heels of a national tragedy, there is always a drive to come together as one people, as as Americans. And this is echoed not just in tragedies in the U.S. but abroad, and various incidents after the London Tube bombings in the UK, after the Madrid bombings, train bombings in Spain. The same process happened. There is an inherent drive, I think, within every person to connect with those around us and our larger country. And it oftentimes takes an event like that, so jarring, so shocking, to really bring that to the forefront and to inspire us to do this again.
And Collin, I want to go to you. Why do you think that it takes such a tragedy before people have to come together? Why can't people stay in that united state?
Well, it's just one of those things that, sort of weekends off, a situation much like 9/11. A lot of people felt vulnerable and scared, and a lot of people just frankly didn't know what was going to happen next, so they sort of went to that as an outlet to try and take away any of the pain that had been brought about by this horrible attack that killed thousands of people. And I think a lot of people probably after a while just seem to have a disconnect with the need for unity, and that need often is ushered in by something as serious as the 9/11 attacks. And as time goes on, they might feel safer about it, might have different reasons, but honestly, I can't speak on their part, but that is just one of the few reasons that a lot of people might have a disconnect. After a while, they might think, oh, we're secure again, we're safe, but you just never know with those kind of situations.
As now we look at the current situation and the possibility of an attack in Syria, do you think that that may have any kind of effect on the United States? Do you think that the people may unite again at all, or do you think because we were attacked that really was the reason? What do you think about the possibility with Syria?
I'd say that it's not going to serve to unite us whatsoever. I think that in this case, it's actually going to serve to push us further apart all the more, because it is not. I mean, if you look at the polling, if you look at the numbers, if you look at what people are saying, there's people are not overwhelmingly supporting this action, or I would say, nor are there people overwhelmingly against this action. So I think again, it'll just serve as another step in dividing us again. Because this is an American action abroad. There's nothing really going on in Syria that is really close to home. There's no feeling, no sense that this is something that's really impacting us one way or another. This is just an action we are taking upon ourselves.
And Collin, I know you talk to a lot of people and keeping up with the news. You're hearing a lot of different voices on this issue of Syria. So far, have you seen people uniting around one side or the other, or has it really been two distinct sides?
It's one of those issues. There aren't going to be people obviously united on either side simply because of the fact a lot of people who are against it say we're already in two wars, we don't need another one. But there are other people out there who think that this is an issue that we should step into and try and alleviate some of the problems there. And again, just going on Brad's point that he brought up before, it's sort of a natural reaction to fight back when you feel attacked. And like you said, with the 9/11 attacks, the United States, we were attacked on our own soil, and that led a lot of people. There was almost 90% support to go to war because of simply the fact that we were attacked on our own soil, and that's something you don't necessarily see unless you feel under immediate threat, or if you're attacked. And at a point like that, we were, as Americans, a lot of people were feeling vulnerable at that time. So this is probably one of those issues that not as unifying. It's more of a polarizing issue, one side or the other. Probably one that will always have disagreements for quite a long time.
Moving on to another topic now, I'd like to play another clip of the Gibson interview, something that he said I think is very interesting because you get to hear from his perspective being the reporter, but I know we all were at a younger age, we're all taking in the media at that time. Take a look at the clip, then I'll get your response.
People come up and say, you were my company every morning for weeks after that, or whatever, and that's flattering in a way. But people will say you got us through that, or you got me through that. There were other shows on the air, and some people watch them unwisely, but anyway. But people do say that you got me through that, and that's the nicest thing that they can say. That they tuned in every morning, and that we were at their breakfast table, and they were at ours, because we would basically put a table in the middle of the studio, and we sat there for 6 hours every morning broadcasting, and basically just saying, here's what we know today.
And now I'd like to ask you two, where were you when you heard the news? Starting with Collin.
Well, I was in elementary school at the time. I was in second grade, and I actually was the one that found out first in my family. Being in Idaho, we were in the Eastern time zone, so the second plane hit the World Trade Center just after 6 o'clock in the morning. So I had just woken up, and I normally just turned on the TV before getting ready for school, and I was the one that ended up seeing what was going on and alerted my mom and dad about what was going on, because I honestly, at that age, didn't really know what was going on, and I looked to them for guidance.
Brad, did you find that you felt that same way? I think that was a sentiment that a lot of people had. Is this going to happen to me? Is this going to happen in my area? How did you feel at the time?
Well, at the time, I just moved to Pennsylvania, and we lived in this town called Allentown, Pennsylvania, and there was the flight 93 that went down in South Central Pennsylvania, which is about an hour, give or take, from where I live. And it was very close to home because we were in school at the time. I actually was in the library. And on the heels of what happened, Flight 93 went down after the second plane had hit the World Trade Center. I think that's the time frame there. At some point, the school was aware of what was going on in New York, and then this happened very close to us. So they had us in the hallway in their version of a lockdown. And so there was quite a bit of fear, just what's going on. We saw teachers crying, we saw administrators crying, and there was a sense of something is going on that we don't know what, but something is going on, and it's for real, and it's bad. We'd had these drills before, tornado drills and whatnot. So what's actually happening? And I remember then going home with a letter from my school. I didn't read the letter; they told us not to, and I actually followed their instructions at that time. And coming home to just seeing my parents with their eyes glued to the television, and for that day. There was, just in my community, and for me, there was quite a lot of fear about what was going on, because it felt even though that was an hour away where that plane went down, it just felt like we were under siege. And even as a third grader, fourth grader, in elementary school, there was this overwhelming fear of like, this is something really massive that is happening right now, and a realization of that. And I went home and I sat there as my parents watched the TV, and I don't think I realized I knew, like, they explained to me that something bad had happened, but I think the next day I saw my dad I came downstairs at 5 a.m. in the morning. My dad was reading the New York Times, and it said we are at war. That was the headline I think I saw. And I realized at that point, I connected the dots, that A, what had happened yesterday had not been an accident, but B, the result was war. And I knew, at that age, I did know what that meant. So there was a real just chilling effect, I think. Just those 2 days just were unlike any other I've ever experienced.
Yeah, it was a very big time. That's why we're still talking about it 12 years later. Now, we're in different locations. We're much older and very different positions than we were then. Tell me about your thoughts now. You just told me about what it was like when you were young. Now it's 12 years later. What do you think about what happened, what we did as a response, and then like the current status of the U.S. now? What do you think, Fred?
I think that's a very complicated question with a very
Definitely.
complicated answer, and it depends on what you look at, what you focus on. So there was the immediate response was our actions in Afghanistan, and then followed up by the investigations into the actual events of the day. It was published by Congress in the 9/11 Commission report, which is a very insightful read, and then after that, there was the situation in Iraq, which basically was a mess, a total mess. I think that we went into Afghanistan out of anger, partly, but also justifiably. The war in Afghanistan was, and what we attempted, our mission objective, what we attempted to do was good, and I think feasible. We lost ourselves in this conflict in Iraq, and I think that cost us the ability to achieve mission success in Afghanistan, and also significantly degraded our position in the Middle East. I think it put us at risk for more attacks, and I think that through the rest of the Bush administration, we were really feeling the weight of some serious international criticism and regional criticism about our actions. I think that there is two approaches that we kind of think about when we're talking about security, when we're talking about the United States security. I think there are two solutions, if you will. The first is a security approach. So when an action happens, when somebody strikes against you, you strike back. And you strike back you don't try to over-respond. You try to find the perfect balanced response. And then you try to take security, for instance, other security actions that we've taken. We beefed up airline security, airport security. We beefed up security at ports, and major terminals of trade, and we became more closely involved in our allies in the region. But I think the second major axis, if you will, of measurement that we need to take a look at, I think we failed, and we failed mightily at this, and that is prevention. So I don't mean prevention in terms of striking through drone strikes an Al-Qaeda cell, which we've been very good at, again, a security response to a security question. It is in confronting the real causes of the motives for terrorism. So what drives people to do such a thing? What drives people to hate? What drives people to act upon that hatred? And I think that the answer is hopelessness and helplessness and a sense of, well, I have nothing to live for, so why should I not fight for this cause, fight for a solution to what I see as my problems.
First on security, the security measures that we currently have in place, just want to get your feedback on what we have in place now for traveling. Obviously, airways and trains even have more security, and there's a big change of security since 9/11. What do you think about the security measures now and trying to prevent an attack that way?
Well, 9/11, we definitely saw a huge array of a lot of different security, um, the rises in security, with having to take off your shoes, having to throw away liquids. Those are a lot of measures that are taken maybe as a reactionary stance. I mean, a lot of these were brought about soon after the 9/11 attacks and in the years following. And part of my job as a reporter, find out what people think. And this is definitely one of those issues where, opinions go back and forth on the issue. Often, this is viewed as a reactionary measure. A lot of people think that, oh, this happened once, it could probably happen again. And so that's one of the reasons a lot of those security measures are taken into place. And there were quite a few years where it seemed like rule on top of rule on top of rule was being implemented, and the government or the TSA or any other organization argued that it would be to enhance our safety. Now, whether or not that's the case, that's up to the people to decide, but that's definitely one of those issues that a lot of people have differing opinions on, and it seems like security hasn't been increasing as much in the past few years as it had been in the, say, 10 years after 9/11, but it's definitely something that a lot of people have on their minds.
Brad, do you think that because it hasn't increased lately, it's been a while since 9/11, and just like we said, the feelings are changing, also the security is changing. They have let up a little bit on security since that time. Do you think that makes us more vulnerable?
I'd say that I'd actually argue that we haven't let up on security. We've let up on security a little bit in places that you can see, right? In your airlines, in the TSA, and whatnot, a little bit. But I'd say that we took them from security at home. We went and said, okay, how can we be more secure abroad? And that was through a massive increase in intelligence spending and budget, a massive increase in the proliferation of intelligence agencies and sub-agencies, and a massive increase, which is still undergoing and going on, and a massive increase in the ability, in the discovery or the ability to use a drone to strike, but also in the number of drone strikes. I think that those security responses maybe make us safer in the short term, but I think there's a long-term question here that we have fundamentally failed, and that is we need to understand that we don't want to just prevent the hijacker from getting on the plane. We want to prevent the hijacker from wanting to hijack the plane in the first place, and that is where we fail, and that is where it takes more than just a security response.
That's a really huge question that you're bringing up there. That's a really huge point, and you're right. That's not something that they address. It's a more long-term thing that should be looked at. If that's huge. How would you even suggest that they go about trying to do that, Brad?
Well, I think those solutions are political and economic, right? So for years we were supporting strongmen and dictators and brutal people in the Middle East because oil and stability. Now, we've changed the equation on oil. We don't need as much oil imports in the Middle East, so we can afford, we don't actually need to support these men. And so I think that we're going to see us stepping back from people like we did in Egypt and Mubarak, and we'll step back from the brutal regime in Saudi Arabia further because we don't need to be as closely interwoven. But at one point we were funding these people. We were training the CIA was training their guards in the prisons how to torture people. I mean, these are serious means that inflame anger and inflame hatred towards our country. And so if we support movements for democratic change, if we support economic change and economic opportunity in those countries, we stand a chance. If we stand out against brutal dictators instead of supporting them, we stand a chance of changing the equation from do I hate this country? Yes, to maybe the U.S. isn't quite as bad as we used to believe.
Collin, what do you think about what Brad is saying? Do you think that there is a way that the United States could do something, even anything, any of the measures Brad was suggesting, or really anything to help prevent the people who hate the United States from hating us, basically?
There are, ways to do it. The exact way to properly do it, that's something that probably, won't be figured out for quite some time. It's definitely one of those issues where there are a lot of strong opinions out there on it. Just like Brad had brought about what his thoughts were on it, there are definitely a lot of different, things that the country could do. What they are right now, we're not sure. How long it could take? That it could take an incredibly immense amount of time to do something like that. Now, thinking about that in practice probably sounds like an appealing issue to a lot of people out there. But one of the big questions might be, how much could it cost us, or how long could it take? Could it be something we could even see achieved in our lifetime? Which even brings up the question: if it takes so long, should we even try to do it?
Good point. Very good questions. Brad, was there anything there you wanted to respond to? And we'll have to wrap up after that.
Yeah, briefly, I think that we already are spending in excess of $50 to $100 billion a year which is far more than we ever have in intelligence, and so we are already making an investment to solve the problem in the short term while ignoring the long-term costs. I think, honestly, if we were to double that, we are not going to strike. There are not as many targets for us to strike using our drones at this point. We're running out of targets to hit. We're running as we scale back the investment there, I think we could use that investment, for long-term projects. I mean, some things are as simple as just stop giving money to dictators. I mean, that's actually going to save us money, and yes, it's going to make the oil market a little tougher for the short term. But again, the U.S. is producing more and more on its own, so that kind of will be the cost will be negligible. So there are some things that are massive problems, such as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is another conversation for another day, which will take much more which will take a lot of time and a lot of money. But there are some small things we can start to do now, yesterday we should have, that will dramatically change the opinion of people of the United States and see us more as the liberator, the source of freedom, democracy, and hope that we so desperately want ourselves to be. So I think that's, again, very feasible in the short term.
Huge questions raised there from our panel. I'd like to thank both of you. Thanks very much, Brad McRoberts from the State Department and Collin Ruane from KOMU TV. Thanks very much again. Many things to continue talking about. The conversation will continue here on Harun Reports.